We already researched this area of Pacific Ocean. Archaeology 1, Civilization Under the Sea. Archaeology 11, Largest Rectangle on Earth 2000 by 1400 kilometers. Archaeology 12, Longest Straight Track on Earth. Archaeology 13, Huge Secret of Easter Island. Now we are going to study a group of crawler formations that I call Galapagos Connection. Galapagos Islands are famous for its unique animals, but our Galapagos Connection has nothing to do with them or Darwin's theory. The name, Galapagos, is used simply because of its proximity to the crawler formations. Nothing more. 5 crawler formations are going to be viewed one by one. Features. Watching my Seafloor Archaeology, very few people dare to say those huge tracks and track formations are the results of some geological or natural activities. Most people agree that they are the results of some artificial activities. And they think artificial means man-made. That is, they were made by human beings. But there is an illogical leap in this reasoning. Artificial things are not necessarily things made by human beings. If a chimpanzee succeeded to make a stone axe spending a long time and used it to attack on prey or to cut down a tree, this instrument should be called artificial, not man-made. Most of things we see in our daily lives are, indeed, man-made, and it is very unlikely that we see something artificial but not man-made in our normal environment. In other words, if something is not a natural thing, for example, a plastic cylinder on the beach, it is very likely that it is man-made. And most people automatically think non-natural means man-made. But this easy reasoning doesn't always hold true. The first one is the smallest among the 5. But even here alone there are a range of track width. It's essential in my video to show sizes as much as possible and make them sink in comparing to familiar scales. I call those huge tracks on the seafloor crawler tracks because they look like depressed traces left by something which crawled about under the sea. To my great regret, I've been unable to find crawlers themselves. We only see the traces they left and formations they made. We know very little about crawlers themselves, but their traces strongly point to their activities sometime in the history of this planet. There are some people who say that those tracks are nothing but ship tracks of investigation ship. According to their theory, they are not real solid entity, but actually only digital illusion collected by sonar ships. They say pictures of Google Earth are imperfect digital constructs and nothing but only illusion. That's okay. Even mere illusion can be useful and helpful as long as it has some correspondence to reality. Black and white TV used to be very useful, although it showed only imperfect and poor image by the current standard. But their sonar ship theory itself is in fact totally incapable to explain huge width of tracks. Some are more than 20 kilometers, appearance of solid depression on the seafloor, and huge strange formations of tracks. Despite their impressive high-tech jargons from sonar technology and image processing, they can't offer any convincing explanation to us. We can hardly deny that there are huge regular scars on seafloors. Some of them are very systematic and complicated, but some are less regular. Some are so huge on almost continental scale. Most of them are disproportionately larger than anything on the land. We know that most of large geometrical traces on the land are made by human beings. But how large are they? The largest scale of those traces made by humans are at most about the size of cities, railways or highways. Let's take straight lines as examples. All we have as straight tracks on the land are about several meters wide, 3, 6 or at most 12 meters wide. But the width of seafloor tracks, which I call crawler tracks, are more than 1,000 times greater than that of land tracks, namely 6 kilometers, 12 kilometers, 20 kilometers. I mean width of tracks, not length. The size of crawler formations is diverse from several kilometers to several hundred kilometers, with some reaching almost continental scale. There are many patterns, but majority belong to square wave pattern, resulting in parallel lines, from sparse ones to very compacted ones with little intervals. Those patterns are made by something mobile on the seafloor, with many reaching the size of a town or a city. If you follow those tracks on Google Earth, you will be obliged to think that something impossibly huge actually moved around on the pitch-dark seafloor very systematically. We don't know which is more difficult to make tracks on the land or the seafloor. It might be easier to do the job under the sea because of less gravity, but conversely there will be great water pressure instead in the deep sea. And it might be totally pointless from the beginning to compare the jobs, because it is like comparing a walking fish and a swimming grasshopper. As one of terrestrial animals living only on the land, we are totally incapable to imagine aquatic life under the sea or on the seafloor. We naturally tend to think of only negative points in living in the water, and almost incapable to think of positive or advantageous points in a liquid world. We simply don't know the life under the sea. As one scientist once said, we, in fact, know far more about Moon than the deep sea of this planet. We are so accustomed to life on the land that we don't doubt that dry environment is normal to life in general. But dry environment is rather exceptional and can be abnormal and very hostile to life in general. It might be very marginal and unfavorable area for a majority of life forms. Sunlight can't penetrate into more than a few hundred meters in the sea. So it is almost pitch black on the seafloor of this planet. And there are life forms there which are completely different from those we are familiar with on the land. According to the current study, photosynthesis is not essential at all to life activity in general. In other words, light is not indispensable for life to thrive, and water is more essential. Life can flourish without light as long as water is available. And as you already know, oxygen in air is not a prerequisite for life at all. Actually, most plants absorb carbon dioxide excreting oxygen, and on such excrement we animals thrive. We, as terrestrial animals, tend to rely on two conditions. Firstly, the necessity of dryness, that is, absence of water. Secondly, visibility, that is, presence of light. In a way, we are land-centric to the bone. We abhor water. We abhor darkness. Consequently, we abhor deep water. Those fears are engraved in our DNA. But seafloor environment can be very favorable to some life forms. The huge scale and complex structure of crawler formations suggest intelligent control and tremendous resourcefulness, that is, highly developed civilization. Those tracks cannot be the whole they produced. They must be only part of their activities. We must be having a glimpse of something barely known to us. Unfortunately, when it comes to civilization, we have no other examples than ours. But from this very limited example at hand, we might be allowed to conjecture that every civilization is based on a highly developed society with great population of intelligent life forms. So huge traces on a planet alone presuppose sophisticated activities of people, no matter whether those traces are on the land or under the water. Were they? We don't know. But they might know us very well. Why? Because they know how to hide from us, how to remain unnoticed by us possibly for a long time. The level of their civilization must be disproportionately higher than that of ours. They know us, but we don't know them. The relation is far from reciprocal or symmetrical. We don't know for sure whether there have been any communication or interchange between we and they in our history. We certainly have some legends or fairy tales relating the underworld and the communication with the inhabitants there. Although there might be some truth in them, we have almost nothing to support those stories. Some of those fantastic stories could be fairly reliable reports, at least partially. So we should treat those stories as something that may reflect some real incident or experience, and not as totally unfounded fiction. Even without communication, they might have been watching us for a long time, avoiding direct contact. I said direct because there seems to be no reference of such interference from them in our history, not to say attack or war. Although there might have been no record of hostile interference from them in our history, who knows about indirect or covert interference? At least it's highly probable that we have been monitored by them for a long time. And it's not necessarily impossible that they have influenced our history in a way or in another. Do they have gills? We don't know their faces. Do they have webbed hands? We don't know. Do they have nuclear weapons? Do they have movie theaters? We don't know. We are unable to fathom their capacity. We are only standing in front of their huge footprints.